Hi, this session called Guidelines for Athletes is about 20 minutes and I'll be talking about the basics every athlete should keep in mind to improve his or her performance. I'll also be speaking in context of restriction on the sporting activities currently due to the lockdown and what to expect in the near future. The stoppage of athletic events around the world, including sports such as basketball, football, tennis, and recently the Olympic Games, illustrates that the sport world is largely affected. In this context, the training routines of athletes have been abruptly interrupted. This change damages the quality and quantity of training. It causes further distancing of the athletes from the reality of their daily training in the traditional preparation sites and creates uncertainties about the future. To the athlete, losing their physical performance capacity can mean loss of competitiveness. Usually, athletes start paying more attention to the program when their performance plateaus or when they are injured or have poor recovery or begin to fall sick. So let's look at some points to keep in mind during this time so that one can maximally and productively utilize the lockdown period. The first point that I'm going to cover is with respect to training. Now, at this time, maintenance of a training routine is important for physical and mental health, minimizing the effects of detraining. It is not possible to create a single training routine that can be applied to all sports. Also, adaptations are required that are compatible with the availability of the equipments and the space available, which is restricted at this time. So small barbells, weight plates, dumbbells, kettlebells, resistance bands and tubes are easy to accommodate at home. So these are the few things that you can stock up. Ideally, try to incorporate actual competition moves or drills that mimic the actual sport as closely as possible. So for example, weightlifters should try to maintain their training routine by performing competition drills like the snatch and the clean and jerk. And powerlifters can should try to maintain the squat, the bench press and the deadlift. So this is about the routines. Now for those who do not have equipment, body weight exercise routines or just training with props is also the next best choice. So for example, jogging, free squats, burpees, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups may be some good options. However, athletes should remain aware of the intensity of these sessions. So it is preferable that it should be planned carefully by a strength and conditioning expert, and definitely the progression has to be monitored. Now attention should be steered towards athletic fitness. It is important that athletes try to perform the technical movements of their sport, although this may be limited in some cases where there is a dependence on the opponent, for example in team sports. Or where availability of the location or practice location is not is inaccessible, for example the swimming pool. So considering the possibility of a quick return to competition after the lockdown is over, so for example the games resume, athletes also need to pay attention in this period to an exercise routine which will prevent injury after return to the normal sport calendar. Now, strategies for injury prevention when you are at home should include mobility and flexibility, work on your imbalances, core stabilization, balance and proprioception, which is the neurological pathways, so the skill training. Skill practice and training go hand in hand and are equally important. We need to understand that one needs to be fit to play a sport, especially when it comes to professional athletes. Skill development requires a base of focus, endurance, strength and power. Let's look at the current status of training facilities that were shut down because of the lockdown. So the Sports Authority of India, SAI, had stopped training activities at its centers from 17th March in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, now the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports has given permission to conduct sports activities in complexes that are situated in the SAI training centers. These complexes will have to follow guidelines issued by the concerned state government in which they are situated. All individuals who participate in and contribute to sports will be considered in the resumption plans, including those at the professional level, community competitive level, and those who wish to enjoy passive but non-contact sports, recreationally. Resumption of sporting activity will take place in a staged fashion with an initial phase of small groups of say less than 10 people while maintaining social distancing, and prior to a subsequent phase of a larger group. So then we move on to a larger group which consists of more than 10 people, including full contact training. Of course, no spectators are allowed at this time. All the athletes and staff joining the training facilities afresh will be tested for COVID-19. The returning athletes and staff will be quarantined till the test results clear them. So that is mandatory. A COVID task force will also be constituted at each training center to guide and monitor all trainees and staff within the centers. Now, the task force will ensure that each athlete signs a consent form declaring their knowledge of all the limitations and risks associated with training under the current scenario. The use of the Arogya Setu app shall be made mandatory for all at the center. The center in charge will maintain a daily checklist for each athlete indicating the time spent at the training facility. So there are various parts, the physiotherapy room, the medical center, etc. Now, the training facilities used by the Olympic athletes will be earmarked exclusively for their use and will not be accessible to other athletes. Training guidelines for every sport will be based on the sports categories, and of course those will be provided. All personal training equipment will be disinfected as per protocol. All athletes must maintain strict hygiene and social distancing norms before, during and after practice as per the guidelines provided. Use of the swimming pool will not be allowed during this period except in facilities that are designated for Olympic training. Separate guidelines or standard operating protocols will be published for allowing resumption of swimming. I advise that you speak to your coaches and also visit the official SAI website for further information. Now let's come to the nutrition. We can consider this period as the off or the pre-season. So some of the challenges is again in body weight. So a sharp increase in body fat during home confinement may require you to drastically reduce your body weight when competition resumes. So, adherence to a strict diet during this time is mandatory. An adequate protein intake from your first class sources, which is your dairy and non-vegetarian foods, vitamins and antioxidants are definitely recommended. Some other supplements like glutamine, creatine, etc. can be taken under guidance based on your training schedule and your activity levels. It is important to avoid prolonged periods of sedentary behavior such as sitting or lying down for too long, watching TV, using the cell phone and the computer, and of course playing video games. So the nutrition targets during this period could be, say, losing extra fat, building lean mass with whatever training program can be maintained at this time, normalizing blood parameters and looking into other health issues, increasing your energy levels, work on your sleep and your recovery. That goes without saying. When it comes to improving performance, focus obviously has to be building on endurance, strength and power based on the program given by your consultant, which definitely has to be monitored. Now, the diet followed during this phase will bring positive changes that will take you through the entire competition period. So, I don't recommend that you follow someone else's program. Individual goals are, based on all the factors that I just mentioned, and it will be different for everyone. So, you need to have a customized plan. The workouts are also customized based on your areas of improvement. So, obviously, the diet has to be in sync with the workout that you're following. So, it has to match the exercise type, intensity, volume, and frequency. Now, a quick tip for when the competition or when season resumes, the nutrition targets would be maintaining the performance gains and of course maintaining recovery. That is throughout the matches. Now, during the matches, the plan changes according to the schedule. So, everyone has a different schedule through the day. Here we keep in mind, the number of matches played in the day, hydration, digestion issues, the rest periods between two matches, energy levels, and of course the availability of food, at the locations where the matches are being played. Now, we have to make sure that you have adequate energy levels in the second part of the day, especially when you have a day-long match, because sometimes what happens due to fatigue or eating a large meal during your break will lead to drowsiness. So, and that causes a drop in your match performance, especially when the weather is hot. So, those are the things we keep in mind when you play matches. Post-match, of course, the focus is recovery, and the player has to be ready to go back to the field the next day. So, again, the guidelines will change based on the activity levels for the day. Now, when you play matches outstation, you will have to be very careful, in planning and meticulously put everything in your bag that, will not be available for you when you go to the new location. Now, coming to a lot of doubts about the low-carb diets in sport. I receive a lot of questions, and people always have, they can't understand how a low-carbohydrate diet can lead to energy, maintaining your energy levels during the activity. Now, different fuels like carbs, proteins and fats are used based on the intensity and the duration of an activity. So, when you move from a high intensity activity to a low intensity activity, the fuels also shift from stored creatine in the muscles to the carbohydrates, then to protein and then to fat based on that, on the intensity. So, most sports require a combination of endurance, strength and power. So, definitely multiple fuels are going to be used. Now, it is believed largely, and that's what people follow, that to improve performance in high intensity and endurance sports, carb loading is important. Now, it has and is being used for endurance sports where actually fat plays the primary role or is the primary source because it is duration dependent. Now, some of the negative side effects of carb loading can be weight gain, insulin spikes and digestive disturbances. So, you have to be wary of that. Another question people ask is about glycogen stores post-workout. Now, protein can provide glucose and also help glycogen replenishment through a process called as gluconeogenesis. So, there is no need to worry absolutely about the energy dropping on a low carbohydrate plan, provided it is carefully charted out by an expert who understands your requirements, right? Now, the body uses more fat for energy when a high fat low carbohydrate diet is consumed over a period of time along with the training going hand in hand. Now, the macronutrients and the micronutrients, coming to that, the amount, type and time of consumption of each macro, which is your carbs, proteins and fats, and micronutrients, which is your minerals and vitamins, is different for every individual based on body composition, medical conditions, training intensity and frequency, and of course your fitness goals. So, only during follow-ups your dietitian can gauge and adjust these quantities. Now, a quick note on hydration. the weather is extremely hot, dehydration causes a drop in performance, cramps and lethargy. Now, what is dehydration? It's excessive sweating causing a loss of fluids and salts. A simple method of estimating hydration is measuring your body weight from pre to post workout. You should not start your training program in a dehydrated state. So, your urine color may be dark, indicating dehydration. So, it is recommended to consume extra fluids during that time. That is at least 20 to 30 minutes prior starting your match or your training program. You should consume adequate fluids and salts like sodium, potassium and other electrolytes to restore hydration. Again, the amounts would depend on the time period before the next training or game and the level of dehydration. Now, coming to supplements, we have ergogenic and non-ergogenic supplements. So, what are ergogenic supplements? An ergogenic aid is something that helps you to improve your sports performance. So, which are the categories of supplements here? We are talking about caffeine, creatine, arginine, beta-alanine and some pre-workout supplements. The non-ergogenic supplements are the others like the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, carnitine, joint health supplements and amino acids like branched-chain amino acids, glutamine and leucine. Now, what you need to take depends on the level of training, individual needs and budget. Now, remember that dietary supplement safety is not regulated by the FDA. Sometimes the label information, quality and quantity of the substance may be incorrect. The World Anti-Doping Agency or WADA controls and establishes the banned substances list for the International Olympic Committee. Each country has an affiliated agency. So, in India we have NADA. The prohibited substances list is updated by WADA every year. A qualified nutritionist or dietitian can guide you with supplementation that are compliant with this list. So, be careful of what you pop in. Now, let's talk about tackling injuries. Nutrition plays a very important role when you are recovering from an injury. Adequate protein and other supplements are needed for rebuilding damaged tissue. Now, the activity levels also change during this period, right? So, the diet needs to be adjusted accordingly. One common mistake athletes make when they are injured is taking less protein because their activity levels are lesser. Remember, there is deconditioning, okay, and some loss of muscle. So, depending on the, of course, extent of the injury and the rest period and the treatment. So, for example, you've had a surgery. So, again, the requirements of the nutrients would be different. We have to minimize the catabolism during recovery, or in simple terms, the muscle loss. In addition, changes in your routine, diet and increased stress and anxiety during the lockdown can be factors that can aggravate the recovery and also increase the risk of injuries. So, be careful when you're training during this time. Also, the accessibility to physiotherapists is also a little bit an issue right now. What about immunity? Now, people keep on talking about the impact of vigorous exercise on the immune system and that it drops the immune function. Some evidence indicates that bouts of high intensity activities can cause post exercise immunosuppression, which is actually nothing but a drop in your immune function. Now, this reduction that is there in your WBCs after vigorous exercise is simply a redistribution of your immune cells, okay, which is actually resulting in increased immune function. So, it does not hamper it. It is actually improving your immunity. So, we know that exercise is immune enhancing, but overtraining can cause a drop in immunity. So, be careful of that. Now, although athletes will train less during this time, during the lockdown, some of them may increase the number of daily sessions, whoever have access to gyms or they have a small training facility in their homes, to get around the stress of this lockdown, because obviously it is a feel-good factor. So, keep a log of your sessions and your recovery. Now, coming to mental health, athletes can use this period by analyzing the tactical aspects of the sport, that is the match and performance analysis of their opponents and of course of their own selves. This period can lead to negative feelings such as anxiety, depression, and lead to adverse behaviors such as alcohol use and smoking, as well as eating and sleep disorders. So you need to watch out for these behaviors and take timely help if you feel that you're going way out of the normal. Relaxation techniques such as meditation, mindfulness, and deep breathing are recommended. Now, the mental game has to be strong, from the day you decide to become an athlete. Few things that the athlete has to keep in mind, when you talk about performance, is focus, discipline on and off the field, then performance anxiety, tackling anxiety, eating disorders, making a comeback after injuries, making a comeback after losing crucial matches. So, we all have an inbuilt coping mechanism. And of course, from time to time, we use that and we are able to tide over a lot of situations in our life. But sometimes we do get, we tend to fall short. And at such times, I feel a sports psychologist can definitely help you to regain your lost confidence and bounce back. Lastly, my message to all athletes is you are already excelling in a sport that you are genetically gifted for. You have chosen the sport, and because you are doing well. If you want to maximize this potential, then you would need the best balance of nutrition, training, mental health conditioning, and recovery. And for children who want to do well in sports, the message to parents is that it is advisable to start early with a good program, as it will lead to the most beneficial outcomes, which include their cognitive health, so their focus in their studies, their growth and development, and of course it will help them to keep up with the demands of the sport. Hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you and see you next time.